Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at the other side plus 17 that we plus 1'd, right? And I did 8.4k overall damage. So before we get into it, I'm just going to go through my talents real quick, talk about some stuff. So this is the first week of Mythic Plus in Season 2. This key was done on that tyrannical, raging, volcanic week. So this was when we had, I think it was 45 renown. So I'm playing Karain and Hungering Void. I would suggest on future tyrannical weeks that instead of playing Karain, you play Naya. Although in the other side, it's pretty important that you have a lot of AoE damage, especially for like the Arden Wield wing. So maybe Karain is a good choice. But honestly, the difference between Karain and Naya, at least at the time of making this video, is not huge. I would still play Naya though on tyrannical weeks and do this exact same talent setup. If you're playing Shadowflame Prism and you're obviously a Night Fae, right? Because Hungering Void is going to help for your boss damage, and Naya will also help for your boss damage from the Mastery buff that you get from Grove Invigoration, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Hopefully we don't have to wait too long before the key actually starts. Okay, just 10 seconds, good. So I'm doing this key with that same group that I did the mists with. This is what the mists turn into, actually. The 15 mists that we two-chested became this 17 the other side. So we'll see where we go. But typically, with Prideful, the route in this dungeon is not as straightforward, right? So with Prideful, there were a couple different routes that you could do in this dungeon. Like some people would go left and get Prideful before the Arden Wield wing or whatever, or take Prideful into Hakar was the big thing. There were a bunch of different things you could have done, but without Prideful, it opens you up to a lot of different things. So I'm pretty sure we were at least talking about it before we did this key. Maybe we do or maybe we don't do it, but I think we go left first here instead of going right first. On this big pull, this is another time where I can kind of talk about like the AoE rotation when you have all of your cooldowns running. I'll go back just a little bit so we can watch that pull again so I can talk about it. Okay, so right here, first thing I do, I target this cultist as it's running up the stairs because it's going to cast something at the top of the stairs or whenever it gets line of sight of people and can start casting. If you just let it sit there and cast, then it's not going to be in the group where people are doing all their AoE damage, right? So what I like to do is as we run by, you either interrupt its cast or you just blanket silence it. What that means is you just silence it before it ever casts anything, and then it will be silenced for the next 5 seconds or so, and it'll start running in. And then after the silence, it'll start casting. And by then, hopefully, it's already in the group. But yeah, what I like to do is I target it, and then as we run by, I wait. It starts casting, so I kick it. It gets kicked by our Warlock, actually, right there. And I'm pressing my kick button right now, so I would have kicked it anyways, but just a little late. So then right here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 targets, right? So at 7 targets, you're not going to be trying to proc your Shadowflame Rifts, really. So you're going to pop Mindbender, you're going to pop Power Infusion, I'm going to pop Void Form, my Ruby, my Fey Guardians even, right? And then I'm just going to focus on doing my big AoE rotation, which is just Searing Nightmare spam. So right here, I should put a couple Vampiric Touches on as stuff gets grouped up, but maybe I don't. Okay, yeah, I just popped Void Form. So that doesn't matter too much because your Vampiric Touch damage is going to be like really, really small in a group like this. So I'm popping Void Eruption. I've popped my other 2 cooldowns already. And then I'm going to Shadow Crash immediately. That's why my cursor is right here in the middle of this group. I'm going to Shadow Crash immediately into this Void Eruption because I don't have Ancient Madness actually. But Shadow Crashing right after a Void Eruption is what you want to do. And then I'm going to start spamming Searing Nightmare. So I get one Searing Nightmare off, I get another one, and then I'm just Searing Nightmare spamming. So my Mindbender is up, and I have my Shadow Word Deaths, and I have my Mind Blasts, but I'm not using them here because they will only hit 5 of the 7 targets, whereas Searing Nightmare will hit all 7 targets, right? So a lot of people will have this problem where they're like, should I be using my Mindbender Shadow Flame Rift procs during a pull like this? And the answer is no. You should not. You should only ever use those up to 5 targets, maybe 6 targets, but pretty much only ever 5. If you get to 7, you should always, always, always be spamming Searing Nightmare. And using your Void Bolts when you can to extend your Void Form. Right there, I did use one of my instant cast Mind Blasts. But then, yeah, I'm just spamming Searing Nightmare basically this whole time. Trying to snipe stuff with Shadow Word Death still is good, because it gives you increased Insanity gen, and Shadow Word Death does a lot of damage when something is in execute range, right? So we finish this off, and then we end up going to the right, actually, so I was wrong. So this next thing we're going to be doing, the Incinerator guy is up here, I believe. Yeah, and wait, is that? Yeah, that is the Incinerator guy. And there's a Enraged Spirit Mask dude. Okay, again, I'll pause real quick. It's hard to count from here, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'm pretty sure. So again, in a 7-pack, I'm putting Vampiric Touch on a couple things because I don't have Power Infusion and I don't have Void Form and I don't have Mindbender. I do have my Mindbender, but it's not out yet, right? So I'm putting Vampiric Touch on a couple things as I'm getting settled, right, and ready to start blasting. And then I'm just going to start spamming Searing Nightmare. I put a Searing Nightmare out before I cast Shadow Crash. This is so that I get increased mastery damage on all of these things. Our mastery increases our damage for every dot we have on something. So if you Shadow Crash stuff that has no dots on them, it'll do less damage than if you just do one Searing Nightmare and then Shadow Crash, right? So I should be Shadow Crashing here soon. I put out a Vampiric Touch on the big guy, the Death Speaker, to kind of help with the damage to them. And then I pop my Void Form and my Shadow Crash, and then I start spamming Searing Nightmare. As stuff starts dying, so 2 things just died, right? Now we're down to 5 targets, which means that this is a good time to start going for your Shadow Flame Rift procs, right? So now that stuff is dead, you need to dynamically change your rotation as you're fighting stuff. So that is something that can be hard to do, right? It's easier to say than to do. But we started out with 7 targets, so Searing Nightmare was best. 2 of them are dead now. So there's 5 targets, which means Shadow Flame Rifts are best. So if you are in this situation, you should stop Searing Nightmare spamming and start Shadow Flame Rifting. Although my Mindbender is now down, so I'm just going to keep Searing Nightmare spamming. Also, I'm the only disease dispel in this group, so I need to dispel this 6-stack disease off the tank. That's something that you should keep an eye on as a Shadow Priest, especially if you don't have any other disease dispels in your group. If you're playing with a Holy Pally, they can dispel it. If you're playing with a Prot Pally as a tank, they can dispel it. Or I think monks maybe can dispel diseases, question mark. I'm not going to say for certain. But then holy or disc priests can also dispel it. So just keep an eye, be aware of stuff like that. Figure out that, oh, I'm actually the only disease dispel, so I need to dispel this. That just means that our tank cannot run away and go back in, right? So yeah, I'm just spamming Searing Nightmare again. Getting out a couple of those Void Bolts. You need to dodge this Erupting Darkness. We call it the shotgun. Super easy to dodge that, though. It's pretty telegraphed. And then, yeah, I'm just sniping stuff with Shadow Word Death here. Like, right there, I had a 10k Shadow Word Death. That's pretty nice. It's a lot more than a Mind Blast would do. Okay, then we're into the Incinerator. What the mage was... Not the mage. What the Demon Hunter just did there, I would recommend that for anybody who's playing a melee on this guy. The Demon Hunter... So we're going into the Incinerator guy, and we have 2 melee kicks, which is enough to get every single kick, but not enough to overlap and still get every single kick, right? So instead of going into this and thinking, okay, I'm going to kick the first one no matter what, he just tells in chat, he says, you first to the tank, which means he's not going to kick the first one, so the tank can kick it, right? And then he can kick the second one, and then they're already alternated and it's set up. Communication like that, super easy. It's like 9 characters, type you first, so it doesn't take long, just enter you first, enter. So I would suggest communicating like that for sure. So good job, meta. And then, yeah, we're just dodging these Scorching Blasts. These Melt Souls come out. Not too bad. You just need to, like I said, just mass dispel these if it gets to like 4 or more targets. If it's only ever on 2, then the healer can almost always take care of it. If it's on 3, it gets a little sketchy for the healer, usually. So mass dispelling at 3 is not horrible. But mass dispelling at 4 is definitely something you want to do. I pretty much always take the Champion's Brand from that guy, just for the stat increase. And then, yeah, we're going into this Enraged Spirit. The tank just said he's going to click the urn, so I'm not going to worry about it. I am Night Phase, so I could click it, but he said he's got it, so I'm going to let him get it, right? I faded that to take less damage, right? And then I'm, just into my single target Void Form rotation, blasting this guy as he's raging at us. We hit the urn, and he should die pretty shortly. I also have Mindbender up, so I'm casting as many Rift abilities as I can, so Mind Blasts and Shadow Word Deaths. And then in that situation, I'll go back just a little bit to talk about priority, because some people will have this question. I pop my Mindbender. I get a Shadow Word Death immediately, and then a Dark Thoughts proc, Mind Blast. And then I'm going to cast another Mind Blast, and then I get into Void Form, right? So I've had 3 Shadow Flame Rifts already, and now I'm getting into Void Form. The priority here, so I'm playing Hungering Void. So the priority here should be Void Bolts, and then Mind Blasts, and Devouring Plagues to make sure you don't cap Insanity, right? What I end up doing right here is a Mind Blast, and then I Devouring Plague to get rid of some Insanity. My Void Form is going to be shorter because I didn't use my Void Bolt as my very first global, but then I use it now. Then I use another Mind Blast, another Void Bolt, a Devouring Plague again, Void Bolt, Shadow Word Death, Devouring Plague, Void Bolt, and then Mind Blast, right? And then I can get another Void Bolt off here if I'm lucky. It died, so I'm fine. So in that situation, like I said, a lot of people have the question of what is the priority? The priority there is always use Void Bolt first, and then secondly use Mind Blasts and Shadow Word Deaths, and then finally use your Devouring Plagues to make sure you don't cap on Insanity. That's the priority in that set of cooldowns. Now we're in a 2-target situation, and my Mindbender and Power Infusion just came up, so I'm going to pop both, and then I'm going to Shadow Word Death, and then Mind Blast, Shadow Crash, Devouring Plague, and then my Dark Thoughts procs when I get them. And then, yeah, my priority here with just Mindbender and Power Infusion is to use as many of those rifts as I can. And in this 2-target situation, let me go back just a tad so I can talk about that. In this 2-target situation, I'm about to pop Void Form, right? So now I'm in Void Form, where Void Bolt is highest priority, but my Mindbender is about to fall off. I've got 2 seconds left, although this is a little off. I've got like 2 seconds left, and there's only 2 targets, right? So I'm going to use both charges of Mind Blast here to extend my Mindbender just a little bit longer and to get my last 2 Shadow Flame Rifts on these guys. And then I'm going to Void Bolt after that, and then I'll Devouring Plague. And now my Mindbender is gone, so I could just worry about my Void Form rotation now. Shadow Crash is a nice thing to use as well every time you have to move. But then, yeah, I'm just trying to keep as many Void Bolts as possible going in this this rotation, so that my Void Form can last as long as possible. And then, yeah, that's that's the 2 target rotation, not super hard. And let's see where we go from here. We go up into Hakar, it looks like. Oh, we're grabbing this anima power. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure what the tank wanted to do on this one. Oh, okay, so this isn't Hakar. This is the Mana Storms. I'm pretty sure what the tank wanted to do is grab all of the powers and then go Hakar and then start blasting the regular way. So let's see. I have my Mindbender active, so I should be blasting these really quickly. I do. You can get some Shadow Word Death resets on those things for the Insanity Gen and for your Shadow Flame Rift damage. But then, yeah, I'm just doing my regular single target rotation. Dark Thoughts proc, Devouring Plague. My Void Form is up, but I think I'm going to save it for this moment because your Void Eruption will do damage to all of those to help people get out. My Vampiric Touch has fallen off, so it would be good to re-up that. Although there's not a ton of time left, I do re-up it. Then I should Shadow Word Death. I faded right before I Shadow Word Death. If we watch, my Shadow Word Death is up. And then right now is when I do it. You'll see I popped Fade and then Shadow Word Death. That's so that we're in execute phase on this guy, so my Shadow Word Death is going to do more damage, right? And it's not going to kill him, so it's going to reflect back to me. And if it crits, it'll do a lot of damage. So I just fade to get the translucent image, which means I'm going to take less damage from the kickback from that Shadow Word Death. As you can see, it doesn't hurt that bad, right? So that's one thing that is like a really small optimization that helps a lot over the course of a key. If you can help it, you should use Fade right before your Shadow Word Deaths. Although there are other times where Fade is more important. Like on a lot of boss fights, it's not worth using Fade before Shadow Word Death, in like Raid especially. You should be in the habit, though, of trying to Fade every time you Shadow Word Death, just to reduce the damage you take. Although on like hard bosses where you need to plan your defensives and things, Shadow Word Death is not priority, right? You're going to want to use Fade for like real damaging abilities from the boss rather than just from your own Shadow Word Deaths, which don't do like 70k damage, right? They do like 10k if you're really unlucky. I pop Vampiric Embrace here, and I stand in this darkness to try and help take less damage. And then, yeah, we're just going to finish off this Enraged Spirit, and then we're going to work on Oros Coldheart. You can Psychic Scream if you're like doing these masks like we were in a really touchy spot like that. If you Psychic Scream, you'll fear them, and they won't run away, but they will stop their cast, right? Okay, so this Biting Cold goes out on our Warlock, which means he needs to stay in line of sight of the healer. Oh, I'm surprised that nobody got hit by that. That was crazy. And then this Cold Snap goes out. The Biting Cold goes on me, so I need to be in line of sight of the healer. I need to be dodging with my feet. And then if it starts to look really sketchy, I'll Shadow Mend myself. I didn't pop Dispersion there because I felt okay. A Biting Cold goes out on our Warlock again. And then this is one of the reasons why the Stone Ward is so good. It will help with this guy a lot. If you can get the Stone Ward from the last guy, from Sagadon, before you fight Oros, it'll help the people who get that Biting Cold on them. Again, in this dungeon, I took the Regenerative Fungus instead of the 2-shot thing that saves you from 2 shots. Now we've got 6 mobs that we're fighting, and I don't have any cooldowns, so I should be spamming Searing Nightmare here. And then I should Shadow Crash as well. If I Fade Guardians here, my Void Form will come up right at the same time as my other 2 cooldowns. And then, yeah, I'm just Searing Nightmare spamming, making sure I dodge the shotgun. Maybe I'll pop my cooldowns. Yeah, I do. Okay, so with 6 targets, you do want to be using your Shadow Flame Rift abilities. So I Shadow Crash there as I move. Couple Searing Nightmares. I should be, 2 Mind Blasts in a row here. Dodge that. Very scary. Shadow Word Death. Some Searing Nightmares. Now we're down to 4 targets. And we're kind of just kiting stuff. So I should be Shadow Word deathing stuff as it dies, and shadow crashing stuff as it's grouped up. And then yeah, I mean that's that whole pack, so not too bad. I hate moments like that where I shadow or death something and then it just doesn't die because everybody moves their damage to other stuff, and then I end up just not getting the shadow or death reset. A way to avoid that would be as soon as I shadow or death something, I decide to only hit that guy. That would help me avoid those. And then right here, our warlock had to AFK for a second, which wasn't such a huge deal, but it did help my overall damage. Because I get to do a ton of damage in this Ardenweald pull that he would have helped do if he had been here. It does mean the key is going to take a little bit longer because stuff won't die as quickly, but I don't mind so much. Oh, okay, so right here, this is like the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is a 10 pull right here, and it ends up going really badly because I pop my Mindbender, and my Mindbender cleaves something with a Shadow Flame Rift, I'm pretty sure. We'll just watch and see, though. So yeah, in this situation, 10 targets, a 1000% only ever press Searing Nightmare, basically. I pressed Void Form to get into Void Form, and now I'm just spamming Searing Nightmare. Mind Sear, and then 2 Searing Nightmares, and then Mind Sear, and then 2 Searing Nightmares. And I don't... Oh, I didn't mean to hit that. I don't care at all about putting Vampiric Touches on stuff, anything like that. You can Vampiric Touch stuff as it gets grouped up like that. But yeah, once it's all grouped up, don't worry about any dots. Just spamming Searing Nightmare. I pop my Mindbender, but again, doesn't matter. I'm just spamming Searing Nightmare. You can use Dark Thoughts procs while you're moving to continue doing DPS, or your Void Bolts. But again, Searing Nightmare spam, right? Shadow Crash as well. Shadow Crash is the other thing you want to be pressing. But Shadow Crash and Searing Nightmare, I'm doing 24k DPS right now because I'm just pressing, again, Searing Nightmare and Shadow Crash. So maybe this isn't the pull that actually goes way bad because it seems to be doing just fine. I should Shadow Crash this while I'm midair. You can cast Shadow Crash as an instant cast, so you can use it while you're moving or while you're getting knocked back or whatever. And then now we're down to 2 targets. I should stop Searing Nightmare spamming, but it doesn't matter because everything's already dead. So right here, I'm pretty sure is where I found out that you can line of sight the charge from this guy. So I'm standing on top of our healer so that we don't get feared and have to run away. Here comes the Wave of Terror. And then the Carnage goes on the healer, so they run out. And then we're going to get another Wave of Terror here soon, so I go stand on the healer again. If anybody tries to tell you that you need to stand in melee, that's not technically true. You just need to stand on top of a friend. Like, I just barely made it right there. This Carnage goes out on the healer again. Okay, maybe it... No, I think it was on this guy. Okay, so we're just going to single target this guy down. I need to make sure my Vampiric Touch is back up ASAP. Our healer ends up dying right there from the dot, from the charge. So if you can line of sight the charge, which you can, and I'll do it right here. If you have the ability to line of sight it like that, you should, because it killed our healer, right? And our healer is not weak by any means. So yeah, like the dot that it deals is pretty hefty. I took the Dagger of Necrotic Wounding on this one because it's, again, it's Tyrannical weak, and the dagger is best for Tyrannical. Okay, maybe here is when I accidentally cleave these hatchlings, I'm pretty sure. So I haven't hit them yet. Oh, actually, I don't know how those pulled. But yeah, we pull 3 hatchlings, which is really, really bad, because they're going to start crying and summoning like a million different guys. Like this matriarch comes over. This hatchling is still aggroed. So yeah, this is like really, really bad. It's good for my overall because there's like 1,000 things to hit right here, but it's bad for my dungeon because we're all going to die, right? Like look how many mobs got pulled because of that. Holy moly. I'm not positive how that pulled. I don't think Mindbender proximity pulls, because I've had Mindbender out and like walked through like that sketchy part in Necrotic Wake where you skip over the thing and my Mindbender didn't pull. So it could have been, I say it was my Mindbender right here, but I'm actually not positive anymore because I didn't see a rift cleave anything. And then our tank takes the B-res before everything resets, which means that we have to all release and run back. But the B-res on the tank might not have even been in a spot where he could have taken it and been able to res. For this little passageway, I like to goblin jump and then soul shape. And then I like to stand at the end and help stragglers. Except right here, something really wonky happens. I grip him, and then he soul shapes, which cancels the momentum on both, and he ends up getting hit by the thing. So that is a sketchy moment. If you're going to grip somebody, you should tell him. I didn't tell him, so we ended up having that weird overlap. But yeah, typically gripping people is fine there, but you should tell them, like I said, so they don't die to that. Because if he had soul shaped there, if I had not gripped him and he had just soul shaped, he would have been fine, not gotten hit. Or if he hadn't have soul shaped and would have let me just grip him, then he would have been fine as well. But because we did both, he got hit and it almost killed him, right? On this fight, this little pack right here, there's nothing really to be worried about. You do need to dodge the stuff that's falling from the sky. On fortified, especially bolstering weeks, the stuff falling from the sky is really important to dodge because it will one-shot you if it comes from the Elder Horn. If the Elder Horn has enough stacks of bolstering, then you'll get one-shot by the stuff falling from the sky. The starfall looking thing. Excuse me. So we're going into these blade beaks, and we're going to take them into the urn probably, if the urn is still up, which it's not. And then we've got, 7 targets again? So I'll pop Mindbender here, and maybe 1 Mind Blast, but I shouldn't be spamming my Shadow Flame Rift abilities. I'm going to Void Form, and then Shadow Crash. And then, yeah, back into Searing Nightmare spam. Dark Thoughts procs when you can. And then I do end up using 2 Mind Blasts here. That was a mistake, for sure. I should have just done Searing Nightmare instead. And then I'm trying to snipe stuff with Shadow Word Death. And then, yeah, that's basically that whole pull. Shadow Crash, as stuff is dying too, is good. As stuff is grouped up at least. And then I will Shadow Word Death 1 more. Get some Insanity Gen going into the next pull. Feels good. Okay, so now we're on a couple, I think it's 3. Okay, so we're pulling 5 things. Okay, we're actually pulling 7 things. So this hatchling needs to die first. It's important that it doesn't cast its Frightened Cries, because it will summon a matriarch. This matriarch over here will hear the Frightened Cries and come running. And you don't want to fight the matriarchs if you can avoid it. And then we end up pulling really big here, actually. We pull the next pack as well because we have some cooldowns. I've got my PI coming up. And I've got my Void Form, so I pop it, and then I'm just, right now, this is pure Searing Nightmare spam. I use my Soul Letting Ruby on something that's really low, so I can get a lot of crit. I'm at 42% crit, as you can see down here. And then, just Searing Nightmare spamming, Shadow Word Deathing as stuff dies, Shadow Crashing, and then that's that whole pull, right? Now that I'm down to the 1 target, I should no longer be Searing Nightmare spamming. I should only be Mind Flaying and then doing my single target stuff, right? Okay, so we're at 64% going into this first boss, which is usually the last boss that people do before Mozala, Dealer Zayexa. I don't have many cooldowns. I've got Mindbender, but that's it. I pop my Combat Potion, and then I'm just going to sit here and single target turret. It's important in a scenario like this, there should be no downtime of your dots. You should never lose your Vampiric Touch or your Shadow Word Pain on the target. I get like half a second of downtime right there because the bomb went on me and I was just bad, honestly. And then we go into this Explosive Contrivance. Easy to dodge. And then, I pop Void Form. My Mind Blast, a Devouring Plague, Void Bolt, Shadow Crash, Mind Blast, Void Bolt, Devouring Plague, Mind Blast, Void Bolt. And then you just want to be rotating between Void Bolts, Mind Blasts, and Devouring Plagues. a lot of people have asked in the past, when should I be using Devouring Plague? Is it okay to use it twice in a row? Stuff like that. The answer to that question is Devouring Plague damage will stack. So if you cast Devouring Plague twice back to back, it will do 2 Devouring Plagues worth of damage. So you're not like losing anything in that sense. But what you are losing is Devouring Plague counts towards your mastery. So I'll pause real quick just to talk about this, but I want to try to pause less. So I've got 16% mastery, right? Almost 17% in this current moment, which means that if I have Vampiric Touch on this guy, they're going to take 16% extra damage from me, from our mastery called Shadow Weaving. If you go into your spellbook and look at Shadow Weaving, it'll tell you all about this. So if it only has 1 dot, it will take 16% extra damage. If it has Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain, so 2 dots, it'll take 2 times your mastery, which is 32% for me, close to 34 because I'm at 16.7. And if you have a 3rd dot, then it'll do 3 times as much, right? So the goal with Devouring Plague is to have as much uptime as possible while not capping on insanity, not over capping. So the exception is that during Void form, you get full benefit from your mastery, meaning it pretends that you have all 3 dots up. So you could have 0 dots up and you'd still get the increased mastery damage. In Void form, it's totally fine to just spam Devouring Plague back to back to back to back. It doesn't matter as far as mastery uptime goes. Outside of Void form, you want to try and stretch your Devouring Plagues as long as possible so that you have that extra 16% damage to the target for as long as possible, right? Although it's like a game between trying to get as much uptime as possible as well as not overcap on insanity. So I pop my Vampiric Embrace here because we're looking a little worse for wear. Pop Fey Guardians for the damage reduction and the cooldown reduction and the increased insanity, I guess. I'm about to go into Void form. And then I'll use my Dark Thoughts proc probably. Yep. And then I Devouring Plague, Void Bolt, Mind Blast. What did I cast right there? Oh, Shadow Word Death. Void Bolt. Oh, okay. And now I'm into my Mind Bender, which means I should be using my Shadow Word Deaths and my Mind Blasts. You can cast, like I said, right here is a good example, actually. So if you've ever looked at a website like WoW Analyzer, or you've ever talked to people who talk to people about how to get better at the game very often, they'll tell you that one of the main things you want to do as a caster to improve is called ABC, or always be casting. And here's a good example of that. So we're going to go into this explosive contrivance, and on the way down, I can't cast anything that requires me to be not moving, right? But I do have 2 abilities. Well, I've got more than 2, but I have 2 high priority abilities that I can cast while I'm falling. So as soon as this goes off, I'll cast a Void Bolt on the way down, and I'll cast a Shadow Crash on the way down, and then I can start casting my Mind Blasts or whatever. So even though I'm, 20 yards in the air or whatever right here, I lose very little DPS, right? So this is something you should be looking to do at all times, right? So if we watch, I cast my Void Bolt, I cast my Shadow Crash, and now I have lost 0 globals, right? I cast a Mind Blast, and it's as if I was not in the air. That's something you should be looking to do for certain, right? Because you'll do more damage. You can use your mount while you're stunned by this thing. And in the past, being mounted has increased the speed of this transport, although I'm not sure if that's still the case. I just do it anyway because it looks cool. I get to fly through Ardenweald, right? And then, yeah, we're just going to move on to the next little section of the key. So we have this Warlock Gate down here, which is sweet. Get to use that to speed up. And then both of our soul shapes fail. Our Demon Hunter is playing the Hippo soul shape, which a lot of people really like. I'm a fan of the default Fox, But also, I just got a yak soul, which is pretty cool. So maybe I'll be a yak boy. I go to grip that guy, but he was doing that on purpose, so I end up not gripping him. And then, yeah, we're backtracking a lot here, right? So I'm not positive if this was worth it, right? We went pretty far to try and get as many powers as possible. We got all 4 powers before going back the way we came to do more bosses. So maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's not. We ended up timing it, so it wasn't so bad that right there I got confused by the anima orb, so I clicked it twice because I thought maybe I didn't have it, but I did have it, so it was pointless. And then something I do here is pretty like omega risky and probably not worth it on a high key. I'll go back and show you. He casts this haywire, and you don't need to be out of line of sight through the whole channel. You only need to be out of line of sight every time it ticks, right? So I get out of line of sight, but because I'm in void form, I have a couple abilities I can use while I move. So what I like to do is it'll tick, I move out, void bolt, move in, tick, move out, void bolt, move in, tick, move out, shadow or death or whatever, move in. Although, so if you watch, it ticks, I move out, 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 and I only got 1 void bolt off actually that whole time because I didn't get completely in line of sight. There are better examples of me doing it better than that, but yeah, like I said, you want to always be casting, so you like that is a DPS increase, right? If I can get void bolts off instead of just standing there doing nothing behind the wall. Although it's high risk, low reward, because if you get hit by those haywires on a high key, especially, you'll just instantly die. So it's not worth it. But you know, this is just a 17, so I wasn't too worried, and I'm just doing it for fun with my friends, so not a huge deal. I mean, obviously I don't want to die, but I try to line of sight that woof there, but you can't line of sight it, I guess. Yeah, obviously you don't want to die, but I mean, it is a little bit of a... It feels bad to pop void form and then just sit behind a pillar the whole time. So, I mean, I wanted to get at least some void bolts out of it. But yeah, I shouldn't be defending that decision. It's just not the safe play. So, don't do it if you're worried at all about dying. And then, yeah, so we're just going to move through. We've done all of the 9.1 stuff already. We've gotten all the anima powers, so there's not a whole lot more to say. Basically just have to do the rest of the dungeon like normal. Right here is an example of a time... Oh, maybe I don't get hit at all. Yeah, I don't get hit at all right there. So I hit it. I got, again, just 1 void bolt out while I was doing that. It can be kind of sketchy to do it in this little area because you're up on this ledge, and if you step off, you'll be down in the middle, and then you try to step back on, and it's a ledge, right? So you just run into the wall. And then right here, I get hit by it twice and almost die, right? That was just super greedy and not safe. We're going into the lubricator. I've got my power infusion and my mindbender, so I pop those. You need to kick those lubricates. It's very important. Both of my melee kicks right there didn't kick it, so I ended up kicking it. Pretty sure it's because the tank was typing, and the demon hunter was... I don't know what the demon hunter was doing. And then, yeah, if you're an engineer, you can turn to the left right here and press the red button, and it gets rid of all the sludges, but most people will know that by now. Our warlock sets down a gate for us to cross. I mean, that's not like necessary, but helpful, I guess. And then, yeah, we're just going to single target this guy down. Because it's raging, it's very important that you kick them when they're enraged. So if you're going to kick them ever, if you can either kick them when they're enraged or not enraged, you should choose when they're enraged. But yeah, like I said, it's important to kick it, but it's more important to kick it when it's enraged, right? And with 2 druids, they can soothe the enrages, so it's less worrisome. Like this enrage just got soothed by our healer, so not too worried about it. This next pack that we're going into, this is usually where you would get a pride, but this is no longer prideful, so this pack is pretty pretty sketchy, actually. Those essential oils that the sentient oils cast, they hurt. And I typically try and line of sight them, but with where the tank is tanking these right now, if you have any say in where your tank ends up tanking these, I would say tank them over here. Try and tank them close to this edge, because the arch that we just came through over here, if they're on this side of the room, you can use that arch to line of sight these essential oil casts, and it saves your healer a lot of stress. And if you tank them where they are right now, then you can't use that arch to line of sight these. You have to go like back into the other room and use the wall to line of sight these. So just a small thing, but especially if you're like, look how much damage that did. That was just one. I see another one coming, so I Desperate Prayer, which keeps me alive. But yeah, if this is I get 2 on me right in a row there, and I kind of freak out, but they get Typhoon, so we're good. If this is like, if you're pushing like a 21 or something, like one of your highest keys you've ever pushed, right? And you're really worried about dying to those, your tank should 100% tank them over in that right corner so that you guys can line of sight them. Any of your casters can line of sight them. I grip our Warlock right here because he's a little behind. That's like the main use of Life Grip in Mythic Plus, sadly. You don't get to do any like super cool stuff usually, but you do get to help the stragglers catch up, which is nice. And then yeah, this is just the single target rotation. The opener was a little scuffed. I used my Power Infusion before I was in Void Form, which you typically don't want to do, just because you want to get as much uptime of Power Infusion within Void Form as you can. But yeah, I mean, it's not a huge difference. It is a huge difference if you're on like a raid boss where you get 60 to 90 pulls or whatever to completely optimize your rotation. In that kind of situation, you should definitely be like optimizing your Power Infusion during your Void Form and stuff like that. I'm amazed I didn't get stunned by that laser right there. But yeah, in Mythic Plus especially, it can be hard to like plan out all of your cooldowns and everything perfectly. So don't feel too bad if you like miss a couple things like that. These experimental squirrels, the healer should be taking care of these. Although this one's about to go off. Let's see. Yeah, so that one goes off and it kills me. That's typically a healer thing, but if for some reason your healer is having a hard time healing all the other stuff, right, those are a huge priority, so it's important to get those. If your healer's not going to do it, you have to do it, right? Because if you don't do it, you just die, like I just did, right? This is the one shadow thing that's very important you get it on the boss, because it's doing the aerial rocket chicken thing. I should re-up my power word Fortitude at some point, so I have more health. Although, yeah, there we go. There's not a ton of AoE like raid damage on Millhouse. I've got my Mindbender and my PI, so I pop them. I pop my Ruby. The thing to be careful about, Maleficent still has 65% HP or 63%, and Millhouse is about to die. When Millhouse is dead, you no longer get the stun that stuns the aerial rocket chicken cast. So if she gets another aerial rocket chicken cast, which she will, we're kind of in trouble, right? Because we don't have a way to stun it. So Vampiric Embrace is something that I will be using at that point. We've got a couple pretty nice ways to deal with it. Like we've got Warlock Cookies, which you don't typically have in Mythic Plus. We've got Demon Hunter for Ink, whatever it's called, Darkness, that's what it's called. And we've got Vampiric Embrace, which I pop right now, actually. Although maybe that was a little early. Oh, but maybe not. She is about to die. I think we get 2 ticks of this. So I should fade this, and I should Desperate Prayer. And I do neither. Okay, so that would have been a good time to use Fade and Desperate Prayer. Yeah, at least one of those. Although, there is an argument to be made about if it's better to just do a little extra damage and kill her quicker, or if it's better to use my defensive. I like to think that the safe play is always the right play. It technically isn't, but the safe play is 9 out of 10 times. I mean, it's the safe play, right? So, like, if it's a sketchy moment and you can either do something that might work or you can do the safe play, I think you should do the safe play almost every time. Even in like the race to world first or something like really, really crazy where every little bit of DPS matters and every little bit of HPS matters, I still think in moments like that, uh, it's better to do the safe play than to do the sketchy play. Up until like the one situation where it's not would be like if you're in the race to world first, your guild and the second guild in the world are within like 2 pulls of each other and it's like really, really close, then maybe in that case it is better to do the super high risk, low reward play, right? But yeah, typically, I mean, you should play safe, right? Because you lose very little, and like the damage in that scenario where we're fighting Maleficent right there, and I decided to just keep doing damage rather than pop my cooldowns and then keep doing damage, my defensive cooldowns, I mean. The damage that I lose from popping my defensives and then doing more damage is so small that it's pretty much negligible, right? My group is having a really hard time interrupting these hexes, by the way. These blade storms that go out from the Deathwalkers, you can shackle undead, and it'll cancel those Deathwalkers. Although, I mean, most groups have ways of dealing with that. Usually melee just runs out, but like our Demon Hunter just took 3 ticks from it, so I mean that's something you can do. And then you can purge those spirits with your Dispel Magic. You can purge it with Dispel Magic or with Arcane Torrent if you're a Blood Elf like I used to be, or Mass Dispel also works for those because they're magic. Right there is a good example of why you always Shadow Crash right after going into Void Form. So if you'll see, I Void Form and immediately Shadow Crash. So I'm not playing Ancient Madness in this key, but when you do play Ancient Madness, it gives you a ton of crit right into Void Form. And if you watch, this Shadow Crash will do 12k damage to all 4 things, right? So you'll see, as soon as it hits, I just jump up the DPS charts like crazy, right? So this is why you always get in that habit of Shadow Crash right after getting into Void Form. If you're not playing Ancient Madness, it's still best to do it like that, because as soon as you're in Void Form, you get full mastery on all of these, which means your Shadow Crash is going to do, 30 something, 40 something % more damage if you have like the amount of mastery that I have. So yeah, it's just worth getting into that habit if you're not already. Right here, we want to use the urn on all this stuff, but we end up, we do actually hit the High Priest just barely. And then my Mindbender and my PI are about to come off cooldown. I could potentially use my Mindbender here, but I should definitely not use my PI, because we're about to go into Hakar, and it's important that I have my PI for the beginning of Hakar, because Hakar is easiest at the beginning and gets harder over time. So you want to do as much damage as possible towards the beginning of Hakar. And that is what I end up doing. I pop my Mindbender, but I don't pop my Power Infusion, which I think was the correct choice. And then we have these Blade Storms again that are super annoying. You can stun them as well, like I just did, the Fear. And then yeah, you just want to dispel their spirit dudes. And then I've got like 25 seconds or so on my Mindbender before it's up, which means I won't have it up for the pull of Hakar. So my opener is going to be a little smaller than it would be. Maybe it wasn't worth using my Mindbender in that pack. Actually, I'm pretty sure it was, because I've only got like 6 seconds left on my Mindbender. So I'm going to hold before I go into Void Form. I'm going to Mind Flay and wait for my Mindbender to come up. I Devouring Plague, Mindbender, Power Infusion, Shadow Word Death, Mind Blast, and then I'm in my Void Form, right? So my opener was delayed a couple GCDs because I didn't have my Mindbender up in time, right? But I feel like I still got pretty good value out of all this stuff, because I'm doing like 10k DPS right now, which is not bad, but could have been better. had I had my Mindbender up in time. On like even like an 18 versus a 17, my Mindbender would probably have been up in time just because the trash would have more health, take a little bit longer to kill. Yeah, so then Hakar, this boss has gotten easier since 9.0. Nothing has changed from 9.0 to 9.1, but since the beginning of 9.0, it's received nerfs several times because this, like, that blood barrier used to be so insane. Vampiric Embrace is really helpful. There's a lot of party damage that goes on this boss, especially if people don't watch their feet, because he throws stuff on the ground, right? And then you got to be kind of careful with this. The last boss you do before Mozala. So this is our last boss before we go fight Mozala, right? So you need to be careful because it's very important that you have all of your cooldowns up, especially on Tyrannical, for when you do the intermission phase of Mozala. So don't pop Power Infusion right at the end of this last boss, right? Because it may or may not be up in time. You have about a minute after you pull Mozala to before you get to the intermission phase. So you can use Mindbender, and if you do it really, really quickly, you can use Fey Guardians and Void Form as well, and it'll be up for the ad. But I almost always just use Mindbender, and then I save my Power Infusion and my Void Form and everything for when the ad comes up. So right here, I use my Power Infusion. This may have been a mistake depending on how long it takes for us to get to that ad phase from now. So let's keep an eye on that cooldown. I will have my Mindbender up in time. Probably. It's got 40 seconds. I will have it up in time for sure for the ad, but whether I have it up in time for the pull is the real question. And then right now we're deciding who's going to go where. So the tank says me and Druid front left, so tank and healer front left. Meta, our Demon Hunter, is going to go front right. Our Warlock says back right, which means that I'm the last of the four, so I'm going to go to the back left, right? Okay, so, yeah, so then the tank says okay, and Priest BL, which means back left, I guess. So I've got 8 seconds left before my Mindbender is up, which is perfect. It's up in time. And I have 10 seconds left on Fey Guardians, so I may or may not. I probably shouldn't use Fey Guardians and Void Form here, but maybe I do. We'll see. Okay, so I pop Mindbender, Shadow Word Death, Mind Blast. Okay, and then yeah, I'm holding my Void Form. So I am not positive if this is the right play. I'd have to go and look. I guess we could do it right now. So it's been 20 seconds. Let's say our Void Form, we get the full cooldown reduction, so we take 20 seconds off of it, and it only takes a minute 10 to come back. If we had used it exactly on pull, will we have it up by the time the ad needs to die, right? Okay, so right there was super sketchy. This crush that the boss does, the boss does an ability called Crush, and if there's no one in melee range for the Crush, everyone just dies, basically. So that's what killed me right there. I didn't do anything wrong, it's just that the tank wasn't in melee range, which was super sketchy. And then now it's looking really sketchy for whether or not we're going to actually time the key, right? We have 4 minutes left, and we're down a DPS, which means we're not going to one-phase this. And then right here, you just want to pop all your single target opener stuff. Super easy to kill this guy if you're a Shadow Priest with all your cooldowns, because we're kind of single target gods. Not so much these days as we used to be, but still pretty good. I should have saved that Shadow Word Death for when he was an execute, but yeah, then I just kill him just fine. I'm the first one to kill him, probably. Oh, actually, the Warlock was pretty close as well. And then, yeah, we're just going to move on. We've only killed 3 of them now, which means that we're going to have to go, our DH is saying back right, I think, because that's the one that, it's front left, I guess. It's the one that he died and wasn't able to do. And then right here, you'll see this pops up, 1 GCD between bolts. That's a weak aura I have that tells me whenever I'm over 140% haste. because once you get over 140% haste, your cooldown on your Void Bolt and your global cooldown are short enough that you can cast a Void Bolt, something else, Void Bolt, something else, Void Bolt, something else, and just have one global between. Although I still need to be convinced whether that is still worth it, because in BFA, especially at the end of BFA, when we had all the expedients and everything, and we were constantly over 140% haste, it was definitely worth it to Void Bolt 1 GCD, Void Bolt 1 GCD, because old Shadow Priest, all you ever wanted to do was extend your Void forms as long as possible. There was no Shadow Weaving Mastery that you had to worry about. There were no Devouring Plagues that you had to worry about. You never generated Insanity inside Void form, except, I mean, you kind of did. The only thing is you were trying to, you would have 100 Insanity and it would slowly drain, and the idea was you wanted to not hit 0, right? So you're trying to keep it as high as possible for as long as possible. So you're not worried about like over capping Insanity. You're mostly worried about not running out of Insanity. And so back then it was really good to Void Bolt global, Void Bolt global, Void Bolt global, right? But now that we have other spells, right? We've got Devouring Plague, we have our Legendary to worry about, all this stuff. I'm not positive whether it's best to continue just Void Bolting every other GCD, or if it's best to use Devouring Plague or your Shadow Word Deaths for your Mindbender or whatever, stuff like that. Right here, I'm spamming Tab and my Devouring Plague button so that I can instantly target this guy as soon as he's targetable and start hitting him, right? And then, yeah, we're gonna finish off this boss, and that's the whole key. So, hopefully this video helped. I know it was a little long, so I apologize for that. If you liked the video, make sure you leave a like. If you really liked it, feel free to subscribe. Check out the description for links to like my Twitch and my Discord and stuff like that. If you would like to watch me live or, talk to me more one-on-one, I could do that in Discord or on Twitch, that kind of thing. Otherwise, if you want to be updated when I post new videos, yeah, feel free to subscribe, and I do post about my videos in my Discord. So, outside of that, I was trying to stretch out this last little bit till we killed the boss, but it looks like the boss is going to take a little bit longer. So I'll just keep talking, I guess. Need to dodge these things. Need to dodge this thing to the left. He truly is the master of death, dude. Really killed my vibe on the end of this video. Cosmic Artifice, you can master spell this, although you don't really have to. It'll drop off people anyway, so there's not like a huge point. It can be sometimes good if you all stack on top of each other and then you master spell it so that you've got more room. But yeah, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I could pop PI here. Okay, anyway, that's the end of the video. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.